Good evening, viewers, and welcome to another session of Mazungumzo. This is your host, Dr. Gilbert Gisharo Gitere. I've been coming to your homes with Mazungumzo for several years. Uh, Mazungumzo is a Swahili word, means discussion, conversation, because actually what Rorty discovered, you know, just to be quick in starting the program, is that any development that helps humans to cope with their environment comes from conversation, nothing else. That's why language which facilitates conversation became the biggest tool a human being has in his hand for improving himself, for it helps him to analyze, to experiment, to observe, and to come with solution to his environmental problems. So even this climate change you hear, which is with us right now, and the pandemic which is affecting us, the solution will come from conversation, nothing else. Now, that's why I've picked Rorty, because Rorty, but singly himself, in his book Philosophy and the Mirror of Nature, which he wrote in 1979, it changed the way people look at how humans acquire knowledge. Prior to that, let's say René Descartes, with we think, I think, so I am, you know, the philosophy of those days during Immanuel Kant, is that people looked at knowledge as if it came from, some place, mystical place, and came into people's minds and brains. And it started to come out onto the environment. But in a real sense, Rorty disapproved that theory completely. He's the one who came with the theory that everything, things, most of the ideas that we digest, decipher, and get solution to them, in most cases, they're all a priori. They have been there before. And the only thing we do is to improve on them as we discuss about them and converse. And that's the essence of it. Because you see, Leibniz said, if, for example, you blew a big picture of the brain, of the mind, because there was the body and mind issue. And the mind of the human beings was kind of looked mysteriously as if this big factory, which if you went in there, you would see ideas at work, like a factory of what human beings churned out from internal to external to affect the objects that were around them, the ideas, inscription of things. You could see that these are thoughts now I'm looking at in that big factory. That's just an example. Then you would see like intentions, you would see representations, and you see beliefs without phenomenal properties in that factory. Then you would see non-intentional things and non-representational things, the raw fields, the sea fibers that Rorty discusses in his opening chapters. How, for example, would foreigners with a different language kind of tell us how they represent pain. Their language is the one we will have to understand they are saying they have pain. They can never tell us they have a neural effect from their body. They have to tell us that pain feels like this in their language. So language is the most important thing for you to be able to understand the other person. So once you speak the same language and you can analyze things from the same language, you can converse, you can share thoughts, you can analyze, then you can see from the word go, you will be able to solve problems that you have through language, nothing else. So sometimes you say, you look into the brain that Descartes and Leibniz brew up as a factory, and you would see beliefs and desires and intentions in that factory. Because this is how human beings perceive themselves, and they kind of, in any kind of decipher themselves as beings. There were these things mysteriously, like the way the Greeks believed that the gods came down from the heavens and they worked miracles within their society. They worked together. They were working in conjunction. You can imagine the gods. Zeus could come down and help the Greeks. That's how the Greeks connected the cosmos. They were entwined together with the universe. So this slowly started to relax with Galileo, Copernicus. These things of the heavens being so closely and the gods and the myths being tied together started to kind of, to separate. That humans were actually, they had a will. And it was a kingdom of, that's what Kant calls it. The moral, the categorical imperative. How humans have to live as really, really good people, using their will. They do what they will. But what they will must also be what they would like people to will unto them, so that you do not exploit. It is the kingdom of ends. Everything you do, something you do to the other person must be an end. You should not use him as a means. So exploitation in the kingdom of wills, ends, had no room. So you can see, since immemorial, these kind of things of abstract things, of the absolute power somewhere, kind of giving us this. These are the ideas in our brains, are the ones which come out instead of from external into internal, and then outside to affect the environment for improvement, coping. So you could see that the real physical objects, the phenomena outside there, with phenomena, because they are out there, we can see they wow us. So you see, Descartes, the idealists, the idealism, come enlightenment. There comes now analytic philosophy, synthetic philosophy, logical empiricism. Now they need a real scientist, as I said in the other program, because this one I'm introducing, because Rorty had to look at the whole of the history of Western philosophy, because he could not really decipher it simply by looking at one thing and saying philosophy is not the foundation of our knowledge. Language is, because language helps us to cope with our environment. And once a human being has language, he has ability to acquire knowledge. And that's why I'm saying the biggest liberator of the indigenous thought, of the indigenous people, was this book by Richard Rorty in 1979, Philosophy and the Mirror of Nature. And that's why you see I'm thinking of just kind of bringing it to the people, so that you see one person can change the history of human beings by thinking and putting down what he's thinking in his brain. That's the respect humans should be given. Because with his pen, he was able to analyze that even if you had people from outer space and they spoke a language, and you can translate, you can understand what they're saying using hermeneutics. The conversation, hermeneutics is conversation. And it's a conversation of consensus and compromise. It analyzes what it kind of seeing are possibilities of bringing answer and solution to people's problems. That is hermeneutics. Phenomenology is the wonders that the things, objects, that wow us. And they are the ones we try to decipher. Because like logic is a method to decipher metaphysics. That's logic. The Greeks came up with logic because they wanted to decipher metaphysics, the transcendental world of the cosmos. So and also a word like reason. The Greeks came up with reason because it became like a wand. You know, in Harry Potter, the wand, the magic wand. If you want solutions to things which you cannot get an answer, you use reason, rationality. And things had to, in a world of Western philosophers that Rorty analyzes in depth, their world was that if they looked at Aristotle, they always analyze Aristotle to get their commonality with what he was saying and try to force what he was saying as if he was searching for truth and objective reality. They created words that all thinkers like Socrates, Plato, Herodotus, Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, all thinkers, all the philosophers of the West were searching when they're reading such people. They always forced. That is what Rorty called warranted assertability. You force things onto people's thinking that they were actually searching for truth. So it started to feel that every thinker, may it be Copernicus, Leibniz, Spinoza, Gadamer, Putnam, Hilary Putnam, Richard Rorty, Heidegger, Martin Heidegger, Jacques Derrida, Whitehead, Charles Spears, Sanders Peirce, all these people were forced by Western philosophers to be that they were searching for truth in all what they were saying. And all they were doing, they were trying to bring truth that the Western philosophers has set is the standard measure of perfect knowledge. So everything had to correspond with reason, rationality, foundationalism, logical imperialism, analytic philosophy, synthetic philosophy. All of these things, all of these philosophies and isms were all forced to come to this force, spaghettify, to this reason, rationality, correspondence, rationality, goodness, truthfulness. They all had to come into that oasis of thinking by Western philosophers. So you see, Descartes, okay, he discusses Descartes and his idea, we think so we are. But before you can think of anything, you have got to discuss about it. You have got first to have a language. That's why in the mathematics, it becomes very easy to conceptualize what I'm saying. Because in a fixed order of predicate calculus, which Friedrich Frege came up with, is that most of the predicates we develop in our languages is all intended as tools to solve the problems of the objects we're looking at. The ice is white. Is white is a predicate. Is white is a predicate. So anything which is a predicate, fixed order of predicate calculus, is actually what is mathematics. You get simple formulas, x and y. They are unknowns in the Western world. You are always solving x or y. A function of x, and it is influenced by many, many other things. Now, Hegel, that's why Hegel, in his idea of consciousness, he says that if you are looking at a screen and it has writings on it, what is a screen? Like, for example, if you ask yourself, what is a screen? If you look at that screen, the screen is not the reflection you are seeing only. It's actually made up first of the room and the people seated in it and what they're thinking. It could be, you can say that first. And then when you look at it, you will see the writings on the board. And they have got to make fixed order of predicates for them to make, it has to have the linguistic logic. All the sentences, the syntax has got to make sense. So the whole combination of that web, that's what the screen is. Now you can see how sophisticated things are when you kind of think just to define a screen where a projection is. That's the definition of it. It's a minute things that actually make the screen, inclusive the viewer. And all is made possible because of language. And Rorty does not actually play down on the contribution of, let's say, Hilary Putnam. He does not play down David Davidson. He does not play down Dewey. Neither does he play down Charles Peirce Sanders Peirce. He doesn't play down Martin Heidegger and his theory of existentialism. No, they have their contribution in knowledge. But the thing he's saying, this fountain that had been created, that all rivers led to that spring, was the source of all knowledge, and the philosophers were the keeper of it. That's what Rorty fought fiercely. Because you see, the problem was, once you accept that actually we got to drink from that simple oasis in the desert is where all knowledge originated from, then the others will continue to be victimized. Because it only meant, because the Western concept is the one which looks at truth as if it was the source of all knowledge. Everything leads there. So you see, people who do not contribute to that ism, right there, they are the others. That's where the problem of the others start. And this is a very, 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 very important meaning. Because let's say Oman van Quine, great philosopher, he actually took the issue of dogmas of empiricism, just as Carnap took up givenness. Because there were these things, like, for example, they were considered, they worked this way. Then the analysis Quine gives about analytic philosophy, synthetic philosophy, and just ordinary thinkers, like, let's say, he puts, there is the synthetic, one side, the analytic philosophers. Let's say, for example, Kant, Martin Heidegger, Descartes. These are people who looked at and also somebody like Hegel. They contributed intensely on language and its influence on knowledge. But using words in the discussion to arrive at some values. But the thing they did, they brought in so many justification, synthesis, reality, truth, correspondence, representation. And all this became centers of where knowledge is leading to. There was nothing philosophers were doing than to create a world of representation of this, correspondence with this, reality with this, truth with this. Search for that. There's somebody like Thomas Kuhn, Frey Raband. They start to come out. And there is this big argument whether really knowledge is actually based on chasing the real. You are chasing the reality. There's no knowledge unless it is chasing reality. There's no knowledge if it is not searching for truth. And you see, that truth has been defined by one section of scholars. A certain civilization has come up with the value or the measure of that truth. But Rorty came up with simple explanation. Human beings, like also Martin Heidegger, was very much in the right direction. But the thing is, he emphasizes existence over language. He praises poetry and the perfect way of looking at life in existence. Poetry becomes the best media for seeing and deciphering the existence of human beings. It is said best, that is Martin Heidegger's belief, through poetry. But you see one thing, language becomes secondary in existence. So that is what the corrections all around Rorty tries to make. And he does it ably. That we are chasing matters of fact. That life is made of nothing but facts out there, and we are always chasing for facts. There is some truth in that, but that is not essence of how knowledge is acquired. Language has only one medium it trusts, and that's language. All these other words which have been made as like matters of fact and facts, reality, objective reality, absolute. Because even in mathematics itself, which is said, science is said to solve many problems. You will excuse me. Some of these things, they are very deep. You got to go into details. I'm just giving a generality. of intros of the things we're going to discuss in detail. Like in the dogmas of imperialism, two dogmas of imperialism. Oman van Quine goes through these things ably, and he kind of looks at the two worlds of analytic philosophy, synthetic philosophy. And he comes up with his sense and experience, empiricism, logical empiricism, and justification on the side of synthesis. Because one factor you got to give credit to Hegel, the synthesis, synthetic philosophers, the hypothesis, thesis, antithesis, and hypothesis, the dialectics, the things which form dialectics, the positive and the negative, they are always in play in knowledge. There is negation and positive and negative. They always at issue. And that one in a phenomenology of spirit and the formation of consciousness in human beings, Hegel achieves in bringing out how we achieve consciousness. But he follows Kantian route. And in the Kantian system of acquiring knowledge, there is a perception, intuition, concepts, understanding, thinking, and observation and experience. And all this, that combination a human being is going through when he observing objects, using synthesis, analysis, justification, and all this, representation, experience, he starts to acquire knowledge. The thing is this, all that is a confused web of Western philosophy. So what Rorty does, he deciphers and brings out all those workings of Kant in pure critique of reason. It is only one thing which ties it all together with what Martin Heidegger is saying, because Martin Heidegger is saying, Descartes was saying, is all made possible when humans or a human being acquires knowledge through language, conversing between human beings, conversing amongst themselves. Serious discussions of people, churning ideas, and coming with solution to the problems before them so they can cope with their environment. So all these other things we had, this phenomenology, they are phenomenology. It is a thing which fits exactly in the realm of fixed order of predicate calculus. It fits somewhere. It's just a definition, but nothing really a priori and important that knowledge cannot be acquired if you do not use the phenomenology or you don't know the real. And these things are extremely controversial. So even when I deal with them and you read them and you kind of think about me, I don't mean any offense to any civilization. No. It is just to realize how many mistakes people had made before Rorty came along. Because in 1995, I met Rorty personally myself at University of Hawaii, Manoa campus. He came to East-West Center, and there was a meeting of American philosophers. And he gave a paper to explain, truth and progress. And he also included a chapter, because he was covering a big topic. He also covered the idea of philosophy and the mirror of nature. In that meeting, it was so heated, such that there were some people really physically think if they had a chance, they would have settled a score with Richard Rorty. Because what he had done, he had destroyed 500 years of a culture. That philosophers, as keepers of knowledge in the West, was all a non-starter. And all what they had used, to mystify people was all a myth. And I could see in the eyes and the feelings and the tension in the room, this guy must be somebody I must know about. Now, this is how I come to know Rorty. Then I wait when that book comes out from that symposium. I got myself a copy. It had articles by people like Jacques Derrida, the disconstructionist. He was also in that meeting. Lucius Outlaw, an African-American philosopher, he was also in that meeting. And there were giants. Davidson was, I suspect he was in that meeting. And if you think of any philosophers, I don't know whether Kwame Appiah, he might have been in, because Kwame Appiah is another giant when it comes to philosophy. Olafia Santa, I think, must have contributed or known about that meeting. But what I'm saying is Rorty. And he's the one who actually, by just that kind of book, he liberated the others. Because now you can see, if we take out discussing mental states, like let's say mental states, the things we think in our minds, are they physical? Oman van Quine and many people, they believe mental states are physical, and you agree with them. But making them physical does not make them the most important things in acquiring knowledge. No, they were just an organ contributing onto language, information of knowledge. And the mental states is, for example, the Greeks were the best because, let's say, the cosmos, let's say geometry, let's say a triangle. A triangle, you don't have to draw it. You can actually conceptualize it abstractly in your mind. And you can see that a triangle has a total value of 180 degrees. And you can say if it's an equilateral triangle, each angle is 60 degrees and it totals up to 180. You don't even have to write it down. But if you now take a piece of paper and you draw a triangle, it becomes a physical thing on a piece of paper. So mental states become physical. And that's why mathematics becomes very important, because mathematics also, apart from being, it can be abstract, it becomes physical. And it is embedded in measurements of objects. Let's say, for example, you're making a prosthetic limb. The measurements are going to go into the limb of that person. And mental states are almost like living things, because at the same time, mental It's an abstraction. It's a living entity of the neurological aspect of your body. I'm gonna kind of stop there. This is a discussion we are now just kind of generally introducing it. It has so many facets. It has many facets, many small pieces that come together to make the whole. Might feel confused a little bit when you start this kind of studies. They kind of feel confusing, but with time, you will start to see things in their true perspective. When I say empiricism, logical empiricism, synthesis, analytic, phenomenological, hypomorphic, names like Frege, Gadamer, Sol Kripke, all these are great philosophers who have contributed in their own area. And these are people Rorty covered. He studied each one of them. Kierkegaard. Because all these people contributed immensely. Look at somebody like Charles Sanders Peirce. The solenoid of semiotics. The theory of thinking. The correlates, how language picks predicates and makes them the norm, the syntax of sentences. Some are negated. They can't fit into the dialogue of human beings. It cannot fit in medicine. It cannot fit in biology. It cannot fit in chemistry. It cannot fit in physics. It cannot fit in natural sciences. Those ones are negated. And when you get right predicates for different disciplines, different values, then this becomes the norm. And they help us to cope with our environment. Sanders Peirce. The solenoid of semiotics is a huge theory. It is like just paradox theory by Bertrand Russell. Because Bertrand Russell came up with the paradox theory. The givenness is Carnap. Because Carnap, Frege, Oberquine, Ludwig Wittgenstein, Ayer, they all contributed on the side of maths, logic, and let me think about it. It's science, maths, and logic. Ludwig Wittgenstein